The world was and will be a mess. I know it.
All right, welcome to your essential financial briefing. Today, we're going to cut right through the chaos, through all the headlines, to find the real story that's moving the markets. You know, the one that's actually hidden in plain sight?
You know, there's this old, famous tango song called Camba lache, and a line from it goes something like this. The world was and will be a dump, I already know. And man, that really sets the perfect, cynical tone for what we're about to uncover. A story all about misdirection and what's really going on when they think no one is paying attention.
So to really get what's happening under the surface, we have to start with the official story. You know, the one that was dominating every single news channel, every headline.
So the story everyone was being told was all about tension, right? You had this fragile ceasefire between the US and Iran that felt like it could break at any second. The Strait of Hormuz, which is just this critical artery for global oil, was basically at a standstill. We're talking less than 10% of normal traffic getting through. Iran was supposedly choking off supply, even charging tolls to get through, which got some very sharp warnings from President Trump. The whole thing looked like it was about to boil over into a massive crisis.
Okay, so the world is on the brink of chaos. You think the markets would be absolutely tanking, wouldn't you? Well, yeah, that's not exactly what happened.
And this is where things get weird. You're looking at a complete disconnect. I mean, on one side, you've got headlines screaming about a geopolitical crisis, about the world's oil supply being under threat. But on the other side, the S&P 500 was cruising along on a 7-day winning streak. Sure, oil was jumpy, but the stock market as a whole, it almost seemed optimistic. It just didn't make any sense.
So that leaves us with the big question, the one we're here to answer today. If it wasn't this massive, headline-grabbing crisis, what on earth was actually pushing stocks up? Well, the answer isn't in the Middle East. It's somewhere else entirely.
And here it is, the real secret. You see, the modern market doesn't really run on news anymore. It runs on one thing above all else, liquidity.
And this little chart just illustrates the massive shift perfectly. Think about it like this. Before the 2008 financial crisis, the market cared about things like corporate earnings, economic health. If companies made good profits, stocks went up. Simple. But ever since 2008, the whole game changed. Now, the primary driver is just liquidity, plain and simple. It's about how much cash is getting pumped into the system. More cash means higher prices, and it doesn't matter what the headlines say.
So who's in charge of the money hose? Well, it's a really short list. We're basically talking about central banks, the Federal Reserve here in the U.S. being the big one, and government treasuries, like our own U.S. Treasury. These two entities can and do flood the system with cash whenever they want.
So, what does this have to do with the Strait of Hormuz? Everything. Because while the entire world was glued to their TVs watching that drama unfold, someone was turning on the money taps. Big time.
Just look at this timeline. It is absolutely critical. In the exact same week that the media was cranking the fear dial up to 11 over Iran, the Fed and the Treasury kicked off this colossal and almost completely silent liquidity operation. The timing was, well, it was perfect.
Okay, part one of this secret injection, it came from the Federal Reserve. They've got this ongoing program where they buy up Treasury bills, and in that 1 week alone, they quietly pushed a fresh $15 billion into the system. Now, that's a lot of money for sure, but trust me, this was just the warm-up act.
And now for the main event, the real bombshell. In that same week, the U.S. Treasury spent down its cash account at the Fed by an incredible $89 billion. And you got to understand, when the Treasury spends that money, it doesn't just vanish. It flows directly into the commercial banking system. It becomes instant fuel for investors. A massive, direct cash injection.
So let's just add that up, shall we? You've got the Fed's $15 billion, and you add the Treasury's staggering $89 billion. That's over $100 billion. In a single week. A fire hose of cash aimed right at the financial system while everyone was looking the other way, worried about a war. So, where were the big financial news outlets while this was going down? You know, the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, CNBC? Crickets. Absolute silence about this massive injection. They were way too busy selling you a story about fear and uncertainty, and they completely missed the biggest financial story of the week.
So if the public was being fed a steady diet of fear, who knew about all this cash? Oh, you already know the answer to that, don't you? The insiders.
There's this old saying in the market,
Las manos fuertes lo saben y compran. It basically means the smart money knows what's up and they're buying. And as that $100 billion started hitting the bank accounts of the big institutions, they knew exactly what to do. They used all that fresh cash to scoop up assets from panicked regular investors who were selling based on those scary headlines.
And this wasn't just random buying, it was strategic. That flood of cash fueled a classic, textbook bullish chart pattern, an inverted head and shoulders. For traders, that's like a giant green light screaming, buy. This new money gave them the firepower to blast right through a key resistance level, setting a very clear technical target for the S&P 500 at 6,900. The smart money wasn't just guessing, they were driving the bus.
Which brings us to our final section, and honestly, the most important part of this entire briefing. Let's tie this all together.
So what you're looking at here is the playbook. It's a pretty simple 4-step process. Step 1, you create a big, scary public story. A geopolitical crisis works great. Step 2, behind the scenes, you secretly pump the system full of cash. Step 3, the insiders use that new cash to buy everything they can from the fearful public. And the result? The market goes up, fueled by pure cash, not by a healthy economy. The geopolitical noise wasn't the story. It was the cover story.
So, look, if you remember one thing from today, let it be this: liquidity is king. If you want to know where the market is really going, you have to follow the money. You have to track liquidity. The headlines, the political drama, all that noise, more often than not, it's just a distraction. It's designed to keep you from seeing the real game being played behind the curtain.
And that brings us right back where we started, with that old tango song. There's another line in it that says, "The 20th century is a display of insolent evil. No one can deny it anymore." You know, it was written way back in the 1930s, but it feels like it could have been written yesterday, doesn't it? It just leaves you wondering, if this is the stuff we can see, what else is happening that we can't?